All right. We're live. Happy Friday, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the Stakin podcast. In this episode, we're sitting down with none other than Neutron. This is one of the first projects that's going to take advantage of interchain security. And in my opinion, it's going to open up the gates for a new generation of apps on the Cosmos ecosystem. My name is Del Rey. I'll be hosting you. Welcome, Spade. Welcome, Soy. How are you, buddy?
Very good. Thanks for setting this up. Nice to finally meet you.
Awesome. Well, thank you for coming. So let's just start from the beginning, right? This is the basic question, and the first one to get out of the way. If you can go over of who are you, who were you before crypto, right? And how you got into this crypto stuff. Maybe Spade, you can start, or you, Soy, can start.
Happy to let Spade start.
So thank you. So I'm Spade. I'm general manager at Neutron. I've been in crypto since late 2016, early 2017. Basically, like before Ethereum came out, I was really bullish on the idea of like disintermediating some sorts of like transactions between people. So once that started happening in the real world through Ethereum and the ability for smart contracts to basically do that, that was kind of like the point where I was like, well, okay, I knew that this was interesting, but now I'm kind of like hooked. And so I started, diving much deeper than I had before. DeFi Summer was a big moment. Kind of like started digging into the Ethereum ecosystem, eventually got priced out of it, and started using a lot of ecosystems, but kind of like devoting a lot of time and attention to what was happening in Terra. Obviously, the rest is history, but still, like that gave me a lot more insight into DeFi and how you actually build an ecosystem. And it also, it's also how I initially started working in, like being a professional in Web3, I guess. And so our team earlier this year, through Prop 72 and through our previous research, decided to build Neutron, and it's been a pretty interesting journey.
Awesome, dude. And what about you, Soy?
I'm not quite as experienced as Spade. My crypto journey started in sort of late 2020. I was actually in Thailand at the time. I'd kind of got stuck there during COVID. We were in lockdown and didn't really have a lot to do, so it was like trying to find something to do that I could do at home. And got into crypto mining. Ended up setting up like a fairly decent sized Ethereum mine, and that sort of printed me some crypto that let me then trade for other crypto. Started exploring all kinds of other different ecosystems, Avalanche and Phantom especially, and just sort of went down the crypto rabbit hole. My background previously was like traditional finance, so it was all a bit new to me, but kind of got, like I say, stuck with it during COVID and just really got into it, and eventually sort of landed on the Cosmos ecosystem, right around the time when Osmosis was launching and Judo was airdropping, all this kind of stuff, and then really sort of got deep into decentralized governance and all this kind of stuff. It was all sort of taking off. Became fairly active in the community, especially like sort of with Osmosis and Juno, and sort of really became like a bit of a cosmonaut of like the last year or so. And then earlier this year, there was like an opportunity to try and join Neutron. Obviously, heard all about them as an up and coming consumer chain with Interchain-Security, and like jumped at the opportunity to join Neutron.
That's great. I mean, great to know a little more about you and the people behind the projects. Now let's go to the topic, right? The topic of the hour. What is Neutron about and what it does?
So do you wanna start, and I'll add a bit afterwards.
Yeah, sure. Okay, so I mean, as we just discussed just earlier, Neutron will be secured by the Cosmos Hub, be the first interchain-secured consumer chain. And basically what that means is that we're going to be the most secure smart contract platform in Cosmos. That's very important to us. We're very focused on being very secure for users, secure for developers, and then we're basically hopeful that gives us a great platform for developers to come and build on Neutron and build some really exciting stuff.
You want to add something extra, Spade?
Yeah, for sure. So is spot on the security aspect of it. The other kind of thing we bring to the table and make available to developers is a lot of cross-chain infrastructure that traditionally was either not available at all or only available to app chains themselves. And so we allow the small contracts that deploy on Neutron to control accounts on other blockchains. So for example, you could deploy your treasury on another chain and still retain control over it, to pass transactions, so you can swap assets that you control on another blockchain through Neutron, as well as kind of like receive the execution status of those transactions so that you know what's going on and what happened to your transaction and react to them, right? So if the transaction succeeded, then perhaps I want to do step number 2, right? For example, once I've swapped some of my assets, maybe now I want to provide them to a liquidity pool. I can do this because I know that number 1 succeeded, now I can do number 2. Or let's say it failed, I want to make sure that my assets are safe, so I want to bring them back. So I can trigger this as a response instead. So that's kind of like the doing stuff on other blockchain part. And then there's the knowing what's going on these other blockchains, which is kind of like the complement to the Interchain accounts module, and which is called the Interchain query modules. Interchain queries do is they allow your protocol to permissionlessly and trustlessly retrieve information from other blockchains. So for example, like what's the balance of this wallet? Was there a transaction that has these specific criteria in X blocks? It's a fully parameterizable way to extract data from other blockchains through IBC. And this normally, this is something new and specific to Cosmos. As far as I know, it hasn't been implemented anywhere else in the blockchain and Web3 industry. And traditionally, people would rely on either price feeds and or oracle, on oracles, right? But oracles are trusted solutions. You need to trust the provider that the data that they give you is accurate. In the context of Interchain queries, you can actually verify that data is accurate by cryptographically, and that allows you to build a protocol that doesn't need to trust data providers in order to perform most of the actions that it needs to do. As long as that data is available on a blockchain somewhere, I guess, connected by ABC as well.
Got it, man. That makes sense. And let me see if I got it correctly. So Neutron is gonna leverage Interchain security because it's gonna rent security from the hub. That's great. It's gonna take advantage of Interchain accounts, meaning that from Neutron, you will be able to execute other actions in other chains outside Neutron, right? Without leaving Neutron. That's awesome. And the last one, Interchain queries. With this, you can confirm data on other blockchains and bring that to Neutron and go from there, right?
Yeah, so an example of why that's important is, okay, let's look at like Quicksilver, Stride, and like Lido and any other liquid staking protocol that wants to go cross-chain on Cosmos. The way that you get the tokens, what you want is you want to have the liquid staking derivative, right? But before the protocol can give you that derivative, it needs to check that you've actually deposited the funds, right? That you've actually given it the atom, for example, that they will have to stake. And so to do that, you need to be able to retrieve some piece of data, in this case, most probably either a deposit into an account or a delegation message or some kind of data from another blockchain, right? And so you can use an Interchain query to make sure that the deposit has been made. And then once you have certainty that the deposit has been made, your smart contract can send the derivative to that person directly. So yeah, that's kind of like one of the many use cases of Interchain queries.
Really awesome, man. That sounds really cool, and it impressed me that you're gonna take advantage of those three things for your network, and it's a consumer chain. I mean, it's super broad, right? I basically get the idea, but I guess there's still too much to be seen about how this will go down, right? So I'm excited. It's like a new experiment. We are building this
Yeah, sure.
future, taking advantage of the capabilities of the Cosmos Hub, right? So let's see how it goes. I wanted to ask you, like, since it's a permissionless chain, anybody can deploy whatever they want there. Am I correct? So
Yep.
I wanted to ask you, like, what kind of apps can be built on Neutron, but I imagine like any kind of app can be built on Neutron, right?
Yeah, pretty much. So in my opinion, there's kind of like a few levels of understanding here. The first one is that Neutron is a permissionless smart contract platform. Anything that can be built as a smart contract, so for example, anything that has been built on Ethereum can be built on Neutron, and more because like we have a different VM and there's some specific infrastructure that we're making available, so you can build like a bit like different stuff as well. So anything that you want to build, you can probably build it on Neutron. But where we really shine, I guess, is if you're trying to, I guess, are two things. The first one is, right now we have this ecosystem of like various dApps that do various things, but to use them, we have to, bridge our assets back and forth. And it's a bit, there's a bit of friction, let's say.
Jump
One
around.
of the ways that Neutron could be useful to everyone in Cosmos is by basically providing one zone where you get proxies for everything, right? So you're just on Neutron and you can use Osmosis because Osmosis is an outpost that routes your trades through Osmosis if you want to. And then you can use Stargaze as well because they also have an outpost. And it's very easy for them to just deploy an outpost on Neutron and other chains as well. So in a way, one of the use cases for Neutron could be to just serve as this proxy, right? But more interestingly, in my opinion, it can also serve as the hub for some of the most ambitious protocols in our ecosystem, which are, thinking very deeply about how to not only exist across multiple chains, but do so in a way that removes as much friction as possible from the user and basically produces a competitive advantage through the fact of being, present in multiple markets and having the ability to adapt to the situations in these various markets. That's a fairly kind of like weird idea, I guess, but one example that illustrates what becomes possible is you can have like Delphi wrote about something that they call the shared liquidity AMM recently. And the way that this would work would be you have a DEX that exists not just on one chain, but on many chains. And when you provide liquidity on one chain, you provide liquidity to all of these chains because what the protocol does in the background is that it retrieves information about the liquidity on each of its deployments, as well as kind of like the general market and the usual volume on all of these outposts. And then from there, it does some calculation to try and either react or predict where there's going to be the most activity. And when it does so, it can then reallocate the liquidity to the best place to maximize how that liquidity will be used. And in doing so, what it's doing is that it provides, it optimizes the execution quality for the traders. So the traders have an incentive to trade through that DEX rather than another at equal liquidity. The LPs get more fees because each unit of liquidity gets more trades. And so there's more fees for the LPs as well. So the LPs have an incentive to provide liquidity to that DEX rather than another that doesn't do something similar. And so over time, if the system is successful, you essentially can have one protocol that serves as like an entire liquidity layer for an ecosystem and is able to serve the market wherever there's demand, and kind of like also exist in areas where there's less demand by just adapting to that and reacting to the necessity for trades, so that basically everybody gets served. Another cool feature about this is that like because you're able to interact with chains without having to launch small contracts, you can effectively allow all of Cosmos's app chains to specialize even more, not have to spend resources and time and work on developing their own ecosystem, because they can be separate, have their own app chain, focus on building it into the best product possible to be the most competitive and the best, as attractive as possible, but still benefit from the integration into the rest of the Cosmos ecosystem, right? You can still, let's say I'm building a money market and I don't want to, enable CosmWasm on top of it. I can still benefit from, for example, DAO's treasury management tools via Neutron over IBC, basically. I don't need to have DAO on my chain anymore, because I can just get it through Interchain accounts and Interchain queries.
Got it. Really cool, man. Besides that, have any team maybe approach you and say, hey, we want to build this marketplace? Can you share some of the projects that's going to be built on Neutron starting off?
Yeah, I mean, so we haven't really started our partnership run where, we'll be talking about these a lot, especially like before launch. But the thing is, for most of these projects, usually you'd want to have kind of at least an oral agreement that this is fine and that we're going to start publicizing and stuff. At the same time, what we can tell you is that you will be able to trade, you'll be able to take on leverage, you will be able to liquid stake, you will be able to create DAOs and manage their treasury, makes multiple types of proposals. You'll be able to trade perps. You'll be able to, there's basically going to be a wide variety of use cases. The thing is, as everything, it's an ecosystem. It takes time building, so not everything will launch on day one. But over time, we expect that it will be a fairly cool place to be in and to interact with.
Let's hope. I'm crossing my fingers already. And just to finish off the topic on the development and maybe dig a little deeper on Neutron itself, what are some of your plans to bring more developers into Neutron?
I think
if you can share, of course.
Yeah, of course. So there's a few aspects to this. Perhaps I'm not going to give an exhaustive list, but I guess some of the approaches are, the first thing is we want to build the best platform for smart contract devs to launch, and that means basically making their lives much easier. We want to remove the complexities that we know exist. So that's why we implemented cross-chain infrastructure, so that not every protocol has to redo this work. We want to make sure that their apps are secure, so that they don't have to, care about bootstrapping a validator set, designing an incentives game that is going to keep their chain secure, making sure that the price remains high enough to secure their blockchains, or be worried about being captured. All of this, we simply remove the hurdle. Then there's a lot of support, documentation, being available, responding to people's feedback on the API that all of these modules together can form, so that over time we can improve it from the stages at launch into an even better product. There's making sure that we have solid infrastructure and tooling, making sure that we have solid RPCs, so that not everything goes down every time that there's a bit of congestion. So there's a lot of that just on making people's life way easier. The second thing is, you want to have a large user base, because basically if you're going to deploy on a phantom town, on a ghost town, that there's basically no point. So you need to have users as well. And the way we're doing that is we want to be well aligned with the rest of the Cosmos community. We want to be supportive. We want to help refine the roadmap and vision around Interchain security, because there's a lot of small detail points that are being worked out right now across, for example, how do we ensure that validators get compensated fairly for the overhead that they have. We're participating a lot in all of these conversations and making sure that the right things are adopted. But in any case, so building an interesting ecosystem, making sure that it's profitable and interesting for people to be in there. We want to reward contributions as well. I think that's perhaps something that you can talk a bit more afterwards. And then I guess the last thing is, we also want to make sure that the devs and teams that would be great fits on Neutron are identified early. So we'll most likely be participating or sponsoring or even organizing hackathons, and we'll probably be working as well with like private capital and as well as like the entire governance body of Neutron to make sure that there are funding avenues that suit everyone's need. So you can get a grant, so you can get like easy support from partners that will help you with the go-to-market, the marketing, or whatever you need. All of this so that basically in the end we end up with like a complete pipeline of from A to Z. If you want to deploy on Neutron, you get support all the way through. And if you just want to do it on your own, you have all of the resources that you need to do so as well.
Really cool, man. That's very useful in my opinion. So would you like to expand a little bit more on the contributions that Spade mentioned?
In the community side?
Yes, on the community side.
Okay, so yeah, in terms of community contributions, yeah, we obviously try and reward our most active community members. As Spade was talking about, one part of the battle is to bring developers in, but of course developers want to come into an active, engaged community, people who are going to use the things that they build. So of course, yeah, we want to encourage people to be very active in the community. So we're doing things like we set up a new Discord. We're very active in Telegram. Throughout the testnet period, we were talking to people in the community, encouraging people to ask questions and find out what they want to know about Neutron, so we can answer everything that they possibly would want to know about Neutron and what the possibilities are for it. We're in the middle of rolling out OG roles and things like that in Discord at the moment, just to recognize our early members. So yeah, if you want the OG role, you need to be coming into our Discord and talking to us and asking questions and finding out about Neutron. And yeah, we'll be happy to give out the OG roles for the early adopters.
I join your Discord every day just to say GM, and
I see that.
and yeah, I was able to notice that you were like assigning these OG roles to the fellas over there. That's really cool.
We're secretly watching in the background, spying on everybody.
not a spine, right? But I like to keep updated. Let's say. I wish I could engage in all group chats, but it's impossible, dude. So at least I say GM. That's my contribution. Really cool, man. And you also, I mean, the testnet, if I'm not mistaken, it's already closed. Can you walk me through on your experience during these testnets? Were there many issues raised? Was it all smoothly? How was the experience for you on the testnet? And also, if you could share some of the validators' experience during the testnet.
Yeah, sure. I mean, we're sort of still finalizing the review of the testnet. So the testnet was sort of structured to include various different tasks that validators could complete, and also like sort of non-technical tasks, what we call social tasks. So we sort of finished reviewing all the various different social tasks where, yeah, a lot of the validators really helped us out and produced really nice content that we're going to be sharing next week. And again, that's something that we feel we can do, is we can support the validators that supported us by trying to use Neutron's presence on social media to give them extra exposure. And we're going to be doing that as a sort of a thank you to everyone who contributed during the testnet. Yeah, and also like, sorry, I'm going to have to do this a little bit again. We've reviewed the social tasks, and the next thing will be to review the technical tasks and give feedback to the validators on that. But yeah, overall it was really smooth. We had a lot of very new validators. We had a lot of Cosmos Hub validators, very experienced validators. So yeah, we kind of achieved everything that we wanted to achieve during the testnet. We had like over 175 validators to try and replicate the Cosmos Hub validator set. And yeah, overall it was very smooth. No problems, no major issues. I think it was very, very smooth process.
That's good to hear, man. Thanks for sharing. I guess that the follow-up question will be, when mainnet then?
That's a good question. So yeah, basically, like we're currently shutting down Quark, but we're still on the Interchain-Secured testnet game of chains. For the mainnet itself, we still have a couple of steps to complete. We'll be getting another audit early next year to make sure that we try and identify any potential remaining problems. We'll be also starting kind of like the evergreen testnet, the testnet that will just keep on running alongside Neutron forever, so that people have a place to test out and build stuff. And
Awesome.
once those two things are done, and the ICS module launches on the Cosmos Hub itself, then we will be basically posting our proposal right away, so that 4 or 5 weeks after ICS hits the hub, then Neutron will go live. I think a reasonable kind of like time frame for this is March, minus or plus a few weeks, depending on like the kind of like governance, like the moving governance kind of like timelines. But yeah.
Totally. Really cool, man. So up to the next question, guys. And for me, this has been great so far. Thank you for your thoughts in this. We already covered the launching, the plans to bring more developers and users, Neutron, and you already covered some of the benefits of interchain security. But could you go over a little deeper on the pros and cons of renting security from the hub?
For sure. So do you want to start?
Yeah, I can start. So, I mean, you're a Cosmos Hub validator, right? Stakin.com.
That's right.
You know about the security of the Cosmos Hub. There's something like, I think, $3 billion valuation at the moment. Maybe 60% of that is staked. So you have, potentially $2 billion, $2 and a bit billion worth of security with the Cosmos Hub. And if you compare that to various other Cosmos app chains, it's significantly higher. If we look at how much is staked in Osmosis, maybe it's $250 million or something like that, just for comparison. And so you get significantly more security by renting the security from the Cosmos Hub. And obviously that has various different security benefits for the people that come and build on your chain, for the security of the chain. But it's not, there are like positives and negatives to it. One of the main benefits is you don't have to go through the expense and the operational difficulty of setting up your own validator set, and it makes it easier in that sense. But at the same time, we're currently finding ways to go and reward those validators, because you don't have the usual avenues of just sort of paying them in your tokens and things like this. So validators will receive 25% of all transaction fees that take place on Neutron, that are generated by Neutron. And this is sort of part of the discussion as to how we, incentivize those validators and make sure that their costs are properly covered by Neutron. So yeah, there's definitely positives and negatives to the whole thing, but we'll certainly find our ways around the negatives.
Yeah, I guess eventually over time we're gonna find out more and more benefits and more negatives, right? Because this is super new, to be honest.
Yeah, I mean,
just go ahead, Spade.
That I'm spending quite a bit of my time trying to think through these in advance, because like basically the worst case scenario in this ICS experiment is it works technically, but then for some reason we end up in a situation where there's frustration around one of the aspects of ICS, either on the technical or economic level, and then that kind of like starts a bit of an internal war, which would kind of like damage the hub's ability to market its feature of interchain security, and potentially damage consumer chains as well. And so like thinking through these in advance is something that I think is really important, and that I spend a lot of time doing. I think so like to go back very quickly to the pros and cons, like obviously the main con of interchain security is that you lose some degree of sovereignty compared to having only your own app chain where you manage everything from the set to the applications on top of it. You don't have access to every single parameter of your chain. Some of them needs to be restricted because otherwise you could potentially damage the hub itself, which is not the point. And so there's a trade-off here, right? It has a little bit of a cost. At the same time, for some applications, this is fairly manageable, and these parameters would not be something that you would be playing around with anyway. And like there's the total amount of security, and so like to go about the pros, sorry. There's the total amount of security that you get, as Soy explained, which is much higher. But there's also the cost at which you get that security. Like the thing is, we don't usually realize the cost that securing these chains have, because it's a cost through inflation, right? It's that we're constantly diluting the value of our assets. And so this is not necessary anymore in the context of interchain security. You have still a cost for that security, which is the 25% of the fees, but that cost is shared across all of the participants of the network rather than one app. And not only that, it's also, well, first, it's not fixed, and second, it's it's a fixed share, but it's not a fixed cost, meaning that if we have less activity, we're just sharing less revenue, but we are not suddenly going into kind of like a bankruptcy situation. And so like basically what in the context of Neutron ICS allows us to do is to take the highest degree of security available in Cosmos and make it available to all developers at the lowest cost possible, right? But like, yeah, so that's a pretty big pro. And then the last few ones, I guess, is for us, it's also a way to be aligned with the hub. Like the hub basically has the power to shut us down, right? And so this, has a strong capacity at making sure that Neutron is not gonna like one day just turn around and decide to start hurting Cosmos. So like that's one way. But it also means that the hub can trust Neutron for like a lot more than other chains because it has this kind of like ultimate power over it, right? And that means that, for example, like a lot of the infrastructure that will be required for Atom 2.0, for example, may end up being on Neutron for the simple reason that it's easier to build it on Neutron. It doesn't make the hub more complex or more like risky or more unstable, whilst at the same time retaining control from the hub onto this piece of infrastructure. So yeah, like I think that's also one of the points about interchain security is that basically it puts us at kind of like the middle of the Cosmos ecosystem and allows us to make sure that we're aligned with everybody and to provide service to everybody as kind of like the small contract platform of the Cosmos Hub, basically, in another way.
Got it, man. And you mentioned that fees and transactions on Neutron, you're gonna collect those fees, and those will be distributed to the participants of the networks, which sounds really cool. Even better that it's gonna change based on the activity. So this will make sure that the network Neutron doesn't get wrecked. Really cool. But wanted to ask you, these fees, are they gonna be paid in Atom, or is Neutron gonna have a Neutron token? Can you expand on that a little?
Yeah. Neutron will have its own token because that's, if we want to have like, okay, so there's a few reasons for that. We can go into it later. I'll first answer the question. Yes, there will be a Neutron token, and both Atom and NTRN will be used to pay transaction fees on the network, at least initially. Perhaps in the future, we will allow other tokens to be used to pay for transaction fees, but that requires some more code that requires liquidity, most probably. And so, we couldn't launch with it, and second, there are a few kind of like attack vectors that we needed to take into account before implementing a system like that. So at launch, it will be Atom and NTRN tokens. Yeah.
All right. NTRN, you said, right?
Yeah. So you take Neutron, you remove the vowels, and then you get NTRN.
I got it. Thanks, man. All right, really cool. I guess we cover a lot on Neutron. It sounds really cool. For me, I'm done from today. Again, thank you guys for sharing this time with me. Before wrapping up, is there something specifically that you want to share that maybe we didn't cover during the podcast, or something that you want to go back to and say it again? Now would be the best time for that.
I'm good, I think.
Nothing specifically, yeah. I mean, I would just encourage you to focus on space commentary, because he's good at that, you know.
Got it. Thank you, dude. Well, guys, with that being said, we always post the links in the descriptions on the guests that we have, but where can people know more about Neutron and get involved?
That's a good question. I think if you want to understand what Neutron is about, a good way to do so is to check our Twitter. That's where all of the important news are kind of like shared. You also get that and a little bit more sometimes on our Discord. So if you want, if you like Neutron and what we're doing, join our Discord. Come have a chat. We try to be fairly accessible as well. And the last thing is that if you're a dev, if you have that skill, then just have a look at our documentation, docs.neutron.org, and our GitHub repo, and feel free to give feedback there as well, or to start building cool stuff with it.
Awesome, dude. Well, with that being said, thank you guys for joining. I wish you success in your project and looking forward for Mainnet. Talk to you next time.
See you later.
Thanks, Del Rey. Thanks for having us.
Anytime.